Over 15 years ago, Ner'zhul stood on the precipice of something monumental. The armies of the Alliance and the Horde traitors surrounded him, leaving him no way out except through. The 4 massive portals he opened, leading to worlds unknown, were tearing his homeworld of Draenor apart. But at this point he did not care. Survival was all that mattered. Draenor was dead to him, and the few warlocks and soldiers behind him were all that remained loyal. His only way out was through one of those portals. And as the Alliance was closing in, Alleria and Turalyon right behind him, he crossed through. Though Ner'zhul himself did not survive this, as we know, and was almost immediately intercepted by Kil'jaeden and about to be turned into an example, but also a useful tool in future invasions of Azeroth, some of his followers continued on. They exited the portal on an uncharted world full of vast open grassy plains, ripe for conquest. The people they met on these plains, largely nomads and herdsmen, proved to be of little challenge to the remaining Horde forces. To Fenris Wolfbrother and other chieftains that survived, this place felt a lot like home. The locals didn't seem to have a name for their world, much like the Orcs ones. They called it only one simple word: Earth. Welcome to WarCraft Earth. In what I still sometimes think is one of the craziest things I've done in my TTRPG is smashing Earth into the WarCraft universe, or rather, smashing the Warcraft onto Earth, as evidenced by remains of the Horde landing in the Caspian steppe. There's of course more orcs back on Draenor and Azeroth, doing for the most part what they did in canon, but these few clans, including the majority of the Thunderlords and Dragonmaw, made it to a new world, one that has never seen an orc before. It might feel strange and cursed and weird to have those fantasy elements on Earth, but role-playing in a magical, alternate version of our real world isn't a completely new concept. I just connected it to the setting we were already playing in, and had to reinvent and remake a few things about Earth to fit it into the greater Warcraft universe and cosmology. And I want to introduce you to a few things we've done. I do want to point out this isn't even a completely new concept. When brainstorming the ending for the original Warcraft 2, Blizzard allegedly considered almost exactly what I've done here: orcs escaping to Earth, to the real world. They imagined warlocks and dragons fighting fighter planes and tanks, and ultimately decided it was a little bit too silly. Well, you gotta learn 2 things about me. Nothing is too silly for me, and I always love to take Blizzard's scrapped and abandoned ideas and tweak them a little and make them work. However, in this universe, the orcs will not be fighting jets and tanks. The world they landed on, called its current year at the time 1182 AD. They landed on Earth in the Middle Ages, during the era of the Crusades, a few decades before the Mongol Empire. In this world, their kind of technology level wouldn't be out of place. Their themes and society wouldn't be that unusual, and neither would be their magic. See, it's not just Warcraft people landing on Earth, it's WarCraft Earth. They have access to the same magic and powers people on Azeroth do. This isn't the real historical Earth, although many historical events are the same for the sake of our familiarity. And it's not populated just by humans either. Much like on Azeroth, you will find high elves in the cities, wood elves stalking the woods, and you'll find dwarves and their independent kingdoms beneath the Alps or the Carpathians. And in other distant lands, far from the original story's focus, you'll find creatures more familiar to those lands. And non-demonic frolicking satyrs, centaurs, or mysterious cloaked egungun, or humanoid kitsune distantly descended from the mythical powerful wild spirits. It's a magical fantasy Earth. You may wonder, how can all this exist on another world and be so similar to what we find on Azeroth? The first thing you got to understand about my world building for the whole universe is that the Titans didn't just make dwarves or Vrykul or even Mogu on Azeroth. There were templates that the Titans kept reproducing on every world they came upon. Hence, you got the dwarves or humans evolving from the same basic templates. But for Earth, largely isolated from the rest of the cosmos, it was a little bit different. Turns out, many thousands of years ago, the Titans felt the presence of a slumbering world soul within the planet that would be called Earth. So they sent an expedition to this system, but only one character survived to reach it. This character was a constellar called Uranus. Left alone to his own devices, Uranus tried his best to replicate the usual works of the Titans. Talking to and awakening the spirits of Earth, he called it Gaia, and with her help crafted keepers for planet Earth. Keepers that would end up being erroneously called Titans themselves. As he's come to realize the real Titans were dead, he thought he was preserving their order in the universe, and made a small copy of their grander work. As we know from Greek mythology, Uranus would eventually be toppled by his children, quote unquote, and they would be toppled as well. Many other cosmic forces took interest in Earth and lent their own strength and ideas to it. New civilizations would rise and fall, such as the ancient Atlantis. Over 10,000 years ago, when the seeds of the old gods landed on Earth and bloomed into Earth's own eldritch abominations such as Cthulhu or Rigolonak, Atlantis defended the Earth. It created a magical superweapon that nearly destroyed Rigolonak, leaving behind only a head that would fester and spread its corruption. They grew proud and confident in their power, perhaps in part due to the old gods' influence. And eventually, the people they were colonizing turned against them. They sabotaged the weapon, which ended up sinking Atlantis, and the world was ushered into a new dark age. As Atlantean survivors in Europe tried to cling to a semblance of their former civilization, new barbarian tribes arose and swept through the continent. Among them, the dreaded Tartarians. At the once led by a heroic warlord Conan, in time the Tartarians would discover the head of Igolonak, buried under what we would call France. Its corruption would take over the nation and plunge Earth into an era of darkness. It wasn't until a new god arose in the Middle East and cleansed the world with a global flood that Earth could be restored and spared the fate of the Black Empire. Now, in the 12th century, Earth and Europe look much as they did in real history, with few exceptions. Some fey spirits from the fairy realm, Earth's emerald dream, took root on Earth and became naturalized, becoming the original elves, now split into the High Elves, conquered by humans, and the Wood Elves who hide in the forest and try to defy humanity's domination. Dwarves, once built as Uranus's workers, hide in their kingdoms in the mountains, like a living barrier between the surface world and the dark, foreboding lands far beneath, colloquially called Hollow Earth, lands of the Dark Elves and the Agarthans, lost descendants of the ancient Tartarians. At the start of our game, you could meet these elves and dwarves and even gnomes spread across the world, much as they are on Azeroth. Most kings and dukes and margraves had their court wizards casting protective spells, divining their enemies' movements, and during war, changing the weather in their army's favor. These wizards, organized in the powerful Hermetic Order, were a societal caste of its own. Maligned by the Christian priests, jealous of their influence and feared by the commoners for their magical prowess, these wizards were almost a country of its own, led by the mysterious and powerful Grandmaster Robert du Ration, whose own true motives and plans for Europe were enigmatic, to say the least. But the wizards were not the only ones with power. Christian priests and paladins, and Muslim cadis and imams had their own holy power. This isn't just a world where magic is real, but where gods, and capital G God, are also real and sharing a very real power with their worshippers. Both priests and wizards have their own role in society, and yet Christianity and Islam and Judaism are still at odds with each other, each claiming only they know the true path to God, only they know how to properly understand the words of the ancient prophets. Which ones of them are right? Both? None? At the start of the game, we could only speculate. And how does the Christian and Muslim God fit into the Warcraft cosmology? Well, For now, I will say only that the real answer would be a little bit controversial. So I will not go into it right now, but if people want to learn more, I will elaborate in the future with a disclaimer, so if people are easily offended, they can turn away. This is, by large, the version of Earth my players found when the game started. An Earth with wizards and elves and ancient fallen civilizations and dark secrets and its own old gods. And a new threat from another world seeking to throw this all out of balance. A new mix of familiar and fantastical that was something my players really wanted to see. Do you want to see more about it and about the stories we've done on this world? Let me know in the comments below, and if you want to see more, leave a like and subscribe and do all the YouTube things to feed that algorithm. And I hope to see you again next time. Goodbye.